Welcome back. In this video we're going to be looking at the new Monsgeek M1, a full aluminium chassis and gasket mounted keyboard that costs just $100 as a DIY kit and $130 fully assembled. On paper this is an absolute bargain, but there is one potentially significant flaw, so I guess the question is, does it live up to the hype it's getting? Before we get into this one, I want to thank WhatGeek for sending me this keyboard for review. Please check out my affiliate links and discount codes below, one of which is for the WhatGeek website where you can buy this keyboard at a 10% discount using my affiliate link or discount code. Both of the keycap sets and switch sets featured in this video can be bought on the Akko website, for which there is also an affiliate link and discount code in the description. So let's delve into some quick first impressions off the back of the unboxing and the stock sound test. The Monsgeek M1 is a simple and solid design with a meaty appearance and plenty of case outside the keys framing the keyboard. In fact, if it wasn't for the encoder and the slightly more spaced out 75% layout, you could mistakenly think you were looking at an Akko ACR Pro 75. This very much makes sense, as several sources say Akko is the parent company of Monsgeek, though in the About section of the Monsgeek website it just says Monsgeek was part of the Akko brand. They kept this one nice and simple with just the cutouts on the sides of the case which reveal brass underneath in terms of standout design features, and while the keyboard has the usual issues associated with a stock build, namely the rattly stabilizers and switches which would benefit from a good lube job, the keyboard does have quite a satisfying stock sound and feel. The KTT black linear switches and Akko ASA clear keycaps give this keyboard a very lively and satisfying kind of typewriter sound and feel that could almost trick you into thinking you were typing on a tray mounted keyboard with an aluminium plate, and there's a reason for that. The gasket system isn't the softest out there when stock out of the box, and it seems like the top left quarter of the keyboard has much less give than the rest of the keyboard. It's normal with this type of gasket mount system for it to have more give in the center and less on the outside where it's held captive by the case, but this one definitely feels different, like it's landing off in the top left. I'm very keen to get it apart and see if maybe it's bottoming out on the dampening pad. My initial thoughts on this one are that I'm very impressed with the build quality and aesthetic. The stock typing experience isn't bad at all, but I am keen to get it apart and see what improvements can be made through a new build and some mods. I'd also like to see what the heck is going on with the gasket system and whether it can be improved by removing the dampening pad. So how have Monsgeek made this $60 cheaper than the Keychron Q1 knob barebone, which has pretty much an identical specification? Let's have a look inside and see if we can't figure it out. It's super easy to get apart because it's gasket mounted, with the gasket system just sandwiched between the top and the bottom case. Obviously we'll remove the keycaps and switches as this is a fully assembled version, then we'll pop out the stabilizers as they are plate mounted, and we'll remove the encoder knob. Next you flip it over and unscrew the 6 case screws from underneath, flip it back over and lift off the top case. From here you lift out the module and disconnect the daughter board wire from the main PCB. To get the module apart you just unscrew the screws from the underside of the PCB which are holding the plate and PCB together. With the keyboard stripped down we can see there have been no shortcuts to keep the price down compared to its competitor keyboards. The PCB is south facing and screw-in stabilizer compatible, it's obviously Hotswappable and with per key RGB, it comes with the polycarbonate plate and not aluminium, which is a plus for me. It has case foam, plate foam and a switch pad, and then there's this weird stained bit of plastic which I'll come on to shortly. There is of course no wireless capability, but this is also the case with the Keychron Q1, which costs a lot more. It obviously has the USB-C port on the daughter board connected to the main PCB by a wire. This allows for the movement of the gasket system. The silicone gasket system is the same as on the Akko ACR Pro and the Akko ACR V2, but there is a flaw that I found in this system that I didn't notice with those keyboards. Before I move on to the flaw, overall the build quality is very nice, and it still leaves me scratching my head on how this keyboard is so much cheaper than the Keychron Q1. Anyway, the There's no other way to put it, it looks like they messed up what could have been a much nicer gasket system. As soon as I was done getting the M1 apart to show you what's inside, I got the module back together and in the keyboard, but without the plastic mat or dampening pad to see what the deal was. You can see in this footage that there is much more gasket movement, not to be confused with plate bend, on the bottom of the keyboard than the top. I could also hear and feel something solid landing in the bottom of the case now that I have the dampening out. You can see here that the JST port on the underside of the PCB doesn't align with the recess in the bottom of the case, so it lands off in the bottom of the case after just a millimetre or so of movement. I put the plastic mat and dampening pad back in. You can see the top of the PCB is actually landing off on the dampening pad, preventing the top gaskets from landing fully under its own weight and effectively hardening the gasket system significantly when in use. You can see that the bottom gaskets have fully landed and there's still a reasonable amount of movement and clearance. For me, this is a pretty big setback for this otherwise very nice keyboard. The gasket should give the same feel and movement right across the keyboard, softer in the middle and firmer on the outside. Anyway, let's get the thing back together and see what improvements we can make. While the keyboard is very nice with a half decent typing experience, there are definitely some improvements to be made, especially if you went for one of the fully assembled versions, but also on the barebone version. First of all, we need to get rid of the dampening pad to maximise the range of movement for the gasket system. We need something in there to dampen the collision between the JST port and the case, so I've tested thin sheets of PE foam and settled on just one thin layer to dampen the collision, but to maximise movement of the case. Next, I holee modded and lubed the plate mount stabilisers it came with. I could have installed a set of screw-in stabilisers, but I like to give the stock stabilisers a shot wherever possible, and plate mount stabilisers are usually fine in plastic plates as they don't slide around as much as they do in an aluminium plate. Next, we're going to replace the KTT black linear switches with a set of Akko V3 cream blue tactile switches, not because there's anything wrong with the KTT switches, but because I lubed these ready for this build and I want to try them out. Then finally, we're going to replace the Akko ASA clear keycaps with something better. I like the way the ASA clear keycaps look, but they aren't the best in terms of sound and they collect dust and dog hair like nothing else I've seen before. I'm going to replace them with the Akko white on black building blocks keycap set, which Akko sent to me to try out. These are an MDA profile double shot PBT keycap set. So let's see how my modded build compares to the stock version. So finally we'll come on to my thoughts. Having used this keyboard stock, stripped it down, modded it and rebuilt it with the new switches and keycaps, I can in fact verify that the Monsgeek M1 is an absolute game changer. I'm relieved to say that with the stock case dampening removed, the gasket system becomes much more consistent across the keyboard with much more movement over the JST port than I expected. When you consider the $60 price difference against the Keychron Q1 and the fact that the $100 it costs will only buy you an aluminium case from KBD Fans, it's an easy win for the Monsgeek against those competitors. I can honestly tell you that the typing sound and feel with my modded Monsgeek M1 is just as good as my KBD Fans Odin V2, which is a high-end barebone keyboard that will run you over $400 in its most basic configuration. I would definitely buy the barebone kit for $100 over the fully assembled version, and you can do a nice budget build as I've ended up doing with this one, and it's also worth going to town with a more expensive build if you want, as it does look and feel like a much more premium keyboard than the price would indicate. The build that I've done here will run you just $158 all in, which is absolutely insane for what you get. Monsgeek definitely appear to be following Akko's ethos, which is to bring some of the best entry-level keyboards to the market that money can buy. All as I can say is get yourself a Monsgeek M1 using my affiliate links and discount codes below, or better yet, commission a build with me and I'll get one for you. That's about it for this one. I'll catch you in the next one.